Namaste and greetings. I, Riya Rawat, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान, नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all at IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today marks the third day of the Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship, Cohort 2.0, with the theme Getting Foothold in Politics, Governance and Gainful Employment, a Gender Lens. This is an online national winter school program, a 4-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship program spanning from January to April 2025. This program is organized by IMPRI, Gender Impact Study Center. The chair of this program is Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, visiting distinguished professor at IMPRI and a renowned advocate for gender equality and women's empowerment, while the co-chair is Professor M. Indira, former professor of economics at the Department of Studies in Economics and Cooperation, University of Mysore. Today we will delve into the critical theme of regional dynamics and women's political leadership. This topic is essential for exploring the evolving role of women in regional politics, their influence on governance, and the unique challenges they face in leadership positions. We are privileged to have an esteemed expert with us today, Dr. Chaitra Redkar ji, Associate Professor in Humanities and Social Sciences at Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, Pune, and Professor Vibhuti Patel ji and Professor M. Indra guiding today's session. The panel of conveners of this program comprises Dr. Simi Mehta ji, Dr. Arjun Kumar ji, Professor Gumadi Sridevi ji, and Advocate Dr. Salu Nigam ji. Before we begin, here are a few housekeeping announcements. Please join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions on the Q&A box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise and refrain from making general comments in the questions to save time. Now, without further ado, let us start our program. I would like to invite our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, and our co-chair, Professor M. Indra, to deliver the opening remarks.
Yeah.
Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Riya Rawat, for introducing the course. And first of all, I would like to welcome our today's esteemed guest and resource person, Professor, my earlier colleague when I was before my retirement, Professor Chaitra Redkar, Professor M. Indira. It's always a pleasure to work with you as a team. And I express my heartfelt thanks to the conveners of this program who put in a lot of work, like Dr. Arjun Kumar, Dr. Simi Mehta, Dr. Gumadi Sridevi, and Dr. Shalu Nigam, an interdisciplinary team of young scholars, and coordinators Ms. Priyanka Negi, Dr. Vaishali Singh, Ms. Satyam Tripathi, Ms. Reeth Lath, Ritvika Malik, Sweta, Ashtaba Jadeja, and Bhaktiba Jadeja. Today we have two presentations. Professor Chaitra Redkar's work on regional dynamics, as it was told earlier, and Dr. Simi Mehta will guide you how to do the research writing from the time of choosing the topic, the idea, to final publication, and keeping the making the print copy ready for the anthology. So, a brief recap of what all has transpired in the previous sessions. We also explained why we have chosen these three interconnected themes of political participation, governance, and world of work. They are extremely important for women's dignity, rights, and also the question of gender justice. So, is very important. We had a first keynote at the program started with keynote address of Comrade Anna Annie Raja, and she also talked about a historical view of the 3 decades of introduction of women's reservation bill, right from 1992 to 2024. She reported a deplorable reality of India's rank in the Gender Equality Index, which is 143rd out of 185 countries. She told the inspiring stories as well as face hurdles which are faced by women elected representatives in the Panchayati Raj institution. She narrated a roller coaster ride of Indian women from Panchayat to Parliament, and she also talked about the money power, muscle power, power of misogyny, and mafia power that women have to face. And when she was asked, what do you think about Sarpanch Pati, she was extremely upset that even after 6 rounds of election and such an excellent work which is done by 50% of women who are taking independent decision. In fact, the recent UNDP NIRD report also shows that 54% of women elected representatives in Panchayati Raj institutions are taking independent decision about their constituency and area development. But still, we have a long way to go because 46% are still under the thumb of their patriarchs. No. In the second day, we had a presentation by Professor Vidyut Mohanty, very engaging lecture on bursting the bubble of traditional leadership and women's leadership in grassroots politics in India and the bottom-up initiatives. And she gave her, because Professor Mohanty has dedicated nearly 4 decades of her efforts, both as a researcher and as an advocate for women's rights and part of the women's rights movement. She also talked about deconstructed the concept of panchayat, and she talked about how we have a legacy, historical legacy of Parveshwar. And she talked about various facets of Panchayati Raj Act, and she explained the Article 243 PESA in the context of Gram Swaraj, and she says it is very closely related to Gandhiji's vision of self-reliance. She gave innumerable examples of glorious contributions made by elected women representatives who she met during her research and during her capacity building workshops, which she was involved in different states for this thing. And she called this change that is happening at a grassroots level as a silent revolution. Though they are hidden from history or they are hidden from mainstream, but they are making a massive transformative change. And she also said that elected women representatives have successfully accomplished practical needs of providing basic services to the constituency. But when it comes to strategic needs of transforming power structure to be more egalitarian, women elected representatives have faced great hurdles and violent attacks. She also gave some of the examples of murder and extremely brutal attacks on women when they took a stand in favor of social justice, especially the Dalit women and Adivasi women. The in-depth deliberations on topics of research, which is so chosen by the fellows, brought very positive vibes because we all felt that they had also done a lot of homework, and whatever material has been shared with them, they have gone through and decided the topic, and that is what made the whole endeavor very inspiring. Us on regional dynamics and women's political leadership first, and then Dr. Simi Mehta. So over to IMPRI team.
Indira ma'am, would you like to add something to the opening remarks?
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
No, anyway, Vibhuti has explained everything. So
Sure,
we
ma'am.
will start with Chaitra's.
Sure, ma'am. So we are honored to welcome Dr. Chaitra Redkar ji, who will deliver the session on regional dynamics and women's political leadership. She will provide valuable insights into the evolving role of women in regional politics, the challenges they face, and the opportunities for fostering greater gender inclusivity in leadership roles. So over to you, ma'am.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Thank you for inviting me for this wonderful workshop that you are organizing. It's always pleasure to interact with Vibhuti ma'am. Great to know Indira ma'am. Happy to get connected with all the panelists for this particular session and with the participants, which I hope would ask me some difficult questions and which would lead us to some thinking about the questions that I personally have been dealing with and asking these questions on various forums. The presentation which I'm making is on the regional dimension, where I'll be taking the case of Maharashtra. Now, why Maharashtra? One reason, of course, is that I'm more familiar with the state politics in Maharashtra. Also, been associated with various social movements in Maharashtra. That is one reason. But there is also one critical reason. It's not just my familiarity with the state, but there is one question which I would be raising in my presentation, and which will explain why, when we are talking about regional dimensions, why the case of Maharashtra becomes or raises rather certain very critical questions. So I'll start with my presentation. I'm sharing my presentation. Okay, desktop one. एक minute. I think I'll have to minimize this and. Is my screen visible to you?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
And is it just showing the slides, or is it showing the Zoom screen also?
Ma'am, it's just showing the
Working
slide.
mode, yeah, you have to make it slideshow. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Fine. Yeah. So as I said, my presentation is on women and state politics in Maharashtra, where we'll be discussing the regional dimension of women's political participation. A brief background about the state of Maharashtra. The state of Maharashtra, the linguistic state of Maharashtra, was established on 1st May 1960 after a long struggle, which is known as Sanyukta Maharashtra movement. And this movement, again, because what I will be discussing later has a significance. It basically mobilized the peasants and workers, mostly the workers of Mumbai were mobilized, and they were the ones who were asserting for the right to include Mumbai as a part of Maharashtra over the rights of the capitalists of Mumbai. And after a long struggle, state of Maharashtra, also parallelly state of Gujarat, was created. The significance of this is that this is a state which was created by a social movement, a movement, long drawn social movement, uh, contributed in shaping the very state. The emergence of state is deeply and directly related to the social movements in the state, and that is something which is very significant for the questions that I would be raising later in this presentation. Now, administratively, if we look at Maharashtra, there are 36 districts that are divided into 6 administrative divisions. Just this is for the sake of information, which I've presented over here. And what you will see is that though this is a very highly industrialized and highly urbanized state, which contributes a bigger share in the per capita income, the state with one of the highest per capita income, and even the rural development that has taken place through sugar cooperatives has created certain pockets, certain centers, which are possibly which are possibly developed more than any other part in Maharashtra and sorry, any part in India, but it's considered as one of the very developed state. But I'll still take you back to the previous slide where you will find that among these 6 divisions, you will find that this development has taken place. Hasn't really taken place equally across all 6 divisions. So you have Mumbai and Pune are developed, Paschim Maharashtra, the Western Maharashtra is developed, Nasik is developed, but rest of Maharashtra and certain part, because Aurangabad also has an MIDC, but other districts are not that developed. Now this certainly has implications for the employment, women as workforce, multiple other factors, and which you would be discussing in other sessions as well. So I'll not pay time, I'll not spend time discussing these issues, but this is just as a background to get idea of what is the region we are discussing. I've included this particular slide. What other factors that we need to remember over here is that female literacy rate is comparatively better, not great one. Gender ratio, the sex ratio is something which is not very promising. These are figures for the sake of reference. Then I have also included figures over here about the percentage of women voters in the state, which is approximately 50%, lesser than 50%. Their voting percentage has remained closer to the general voting percentage in the state. Nothing very drastically different or very remarkably significant kind of percentage. This is, in fact, the purpose for sharing is this, that as compared to the other factors which I mentioned over here, in the previous slide, this slide won't tell you anything very drastically different or something very remarkable as such. More or less, this trend represent the trend which you would come across in developed states. Now, what is the political scene in Maharashtra? You would see that there are 48 Lok Sabha seats, 19 Rajya Sabha seats, 288 Vidhan Sabha seats, and 78 Vidhan Parishad. The state legislature is bicameral in Maharashtra. So just like Rajya Sabha, we have other chamber in Maharashtra which is called as Vidhan Parishad. And the members of Vidhan Parishad are not elected directly, but they are elected by the local bodies. And there are a couple of other provisions. People get elected also from teachers' constituency and graduate constituency. And there are certain nominations, but you can consider this as something parallel to Rajya Sabha. Now, what is the trend that we see in this at present? You have out of 48 members, there are 7 members are women. In Rajya Sabha, this is 2019 figure. I have not been able to update this, but there were 4 women out of 19. In 2024, the latest election that took place in the state, and for Vidhan Sabha, for state assembly, you get to see that there are, out of 288, there are 21 women. And in Vidhan Parishad again, which as I said is a 2019 figure, out of 78, there were 4 women. Now, previously also what you would see in case of in Vidhan Parishad, most of the time, the women came either from graduate constituency or from teachers constituency, but not even as representatives of local bodies. Now, when we talk about these 7 women who are directly elected by people for Lok Sabha, and these 21 women that are elected to Vidhan Sabha, directly elected by the people. One also interesting factor which we will have to keep in mind, that though the number of women who get elected is small, the women who contest election is not that small. So you will find over here is that that number is consistently increasing. There was a drop in 1999, but again, there is a steady increase. So the figure, the lighter shade of in the graph represents the number of women who contested election in the Vidhan Sabha election. So you will find in the 2004, there were 157 women who contested election. Only 12 could get elected. In 2009, it was the number of women contesting election was 211. Only 11 women got elected. In 2014, the women who contested election 277, 20 women got elected. 2019, 239, 24 women got elected. And this year, the previous year, because we are in January, so now 2025. So last year when the elections took place, 2024, 363 women contested elections and only 21 got elected. Now, who are these women who contest elections? You will find that very rarely women with party affiliation lose elections. Of course, they lose elections, but this big number shows that these are independent women who contest elections. Now, that this is something which is very interesting, that what motivates women to contest election when there is least chance of them getting elected. Now, also what one needs to keep in mind, that it's not something which is unique about women, in the sense that if you take into consideration the number of candidates contesting election, either for Lok Sabha or for Vidhan Sabha across India, one factor which we get to see is this, that the number of people contesting election is multiple times bigger than the seats that are available in the state. So this is nothing very unique about women, that only in case of women, the number of women contesting election is bigger than the women who get elected. But what is interesting over here is that when we say that there are no women, because that's something which at times it's said, that we talk about at times winnability factor, we talk about women keeping themselves away from electoral politics because of various factors which I'll be discussing later in the presentation. The fact of the matter is that even when this is a general trend, irrespective of gender, we also need to keep in mind that the number of women contesting election is not small. It is sizable. It is good amount of women, whether independent or with party affiliation, or after some kind of defection or some kind of rebel, which certain point of time also happens in politics. We do get to see that the number of women contesting election is increasing, and that is consistently increasing. This time the number again was remarkably high, and the figure is quite big, and we haven't seen such a big number in the state of Maharashtra before. 363 women contested Vidhan Sabha elections. But when we are saying this, what we also need to keep in mind is this, that the women who generally get party tickets, the women who have party affiliations, are the women who are from political families. And in case of Maharashtra, what we get to see is that there is this kind of a father-daughter duo which we get to see, and that's a quite remarkable feature of Maharashtra politics. Elsewhere also you would find this, but the number in Maharashtra is quite remarkable, and you will find that in many politicians' families, it is the daughter who is taking ahead the legacy of the father. So of course, Sharad Pawar and Supriya Sule, Sunil Dutt, Priya Dutt, Poonam Mahajan, daughter of Pramod Mahajan, Sushil Kumar Shinde's daughter, Praniti Shinde. So this large number, Varsha Gaikwad, who's again this time her victory was quite remarkable. In case of Eknath Khadse, it's his daughter-in-law, Shaina Insi, who's daughter of Nana Chudasama. So you have our Pankaja Munde. And this is just by way of example. You can add many more such names to this list. So this is a very typical trend in Maharashtra, that women, the daughters are taking ahead the legacy of their fathers. Now, whatever I've said so far possibly would have made you think that what is new or what is so different that she is talking about. This is something that we know, that that's something which is happening across India. Something which was by the press basically calls this as Bahu Beti Brigade, and that is something which happens across India. So what's so new? And we are just mentioning some different names over here. This is something that we generally know, and even this is known to a lay person. So what is the point in highlighting this? When I'm making this presentation, what is the point in talking about these factors? Before I make that point clear, there are a couple of other additions to the argument which I'm making. To develop that argument, there are a couple of other points which I would just like to add by way of a reminder, that Maharashtra has not seen a woman chief minister. People do mention at times the name of Shalinitai Patil, but Shalinitai Patil was wife of Vasantdada Patil, and when Vasantdada Patil was unveiled, that point of time it is said that she was given charge or something of that sort, but she never was a proper chief minister of Maharashtra. So despite Maharashtra being said as being seen as a progressive state, or a state representing the ideas of Phule, Shahu and Ambedkar, we have not seen a single woman chief minister in the state so far. Again, if we have to talk about women in cabinets, then again we get to see there is some kind of a tokenism. The women who are included as are best described as poster girl phenomena, because to show to showcase some kind of inclusiveness, you tend to include somebody from other backward classes, somebody from scheduled caste, somebody from minority, and some woman. So that's some kind of a tokenism. There has been interesting studies that have taken place on the social character of Maharashtra's cabinets, and it has been proven, the figures tell us that it has always been the dominant caste. Those who have done sociology must have heard about this M.N. Srinivas dominant caste thesis, where in all Indian states, it is a caste which is not at the apex of the caste hierarchy, a middle caste, but a landholding caste, which has stayed dominant in politics. That caste is called as dominant caste. So it would be Marathas in Maharashtra, Patidars in Gujarat, and similarly in other states you would come across some dominant caste, which is a landholding caste. So they have featured, they have been part of the 80 to 85% of the consecutive cabinets right from 1960 to date. You will find that in recent times, particularly after Mandal Commission's recommendations have been accepted, after that, the the percentage has slightly changed in the sense there is inclusion of OBCs in the cabinet, but still the dominant castes dominate the cabinet cabinets elsewhere and also in Maharashtra. In case of women, those who get included again, as we saw in this slide, of course here mostly the names are in the national politics, but people like women like Praniti Shinde or Pankaja Munde, Pankaja Munde is still in state level politics. Praniti Shinde before contesting for Lok Sabha had contested for Vidhan Sabha and also had got elected. So you'll get to see that these women who belong to political families, they are generally the ones who basically were included or have some kind of a political connections. The names which are right from 60s, if you take into consideration, would be Pratibha Patil, who became the President of India, Chandrika Kenia, Fauzia Khan, Shobhatai Fadnavis. But then you will also find that these were the women ministers who were given responsibility either of child and women development or social welfare or primary education. This is again all India trend. So even when I'm talking about the case of Maharashtra, a regional trend, this confirms the all India trend that generally women are included as tokenism, and they have been given certain typical ministries. Now the question is, when I'm raising, and that's basically the critical question which I'm raising in this presentation. So all this background that we saw, all these slides where I have spoken about women's percentage, which is more or less which more or less confirms the national rate, not very strikingly different or very amazing in either or bad also, not very bad or also not remarkably good also. It's something which you would get to see anywhere in any other state. Some numbers here and there, but nothing very strikingly different. This you will find over here, except possibly this particular slide where I've spoken about the father-daughter duo. Apart from that, there is nothing which is very strikingly different or a regional trend as such. But the question over here is that why women are underrepresented in the state politics. This question is critical because of these two slides, which I would rather emphasize upon. What we get to see is that Maharashtra has seen a very, very strong women's movement. The women's movement that started in 1970s. If you take into consideration what happened in 1970s, but even as a background, if you take into consideration the entire 19th century and 20th century social reforms, apart from Bengal, Maharashtra is a state which has represented various voices that spoke for women's rights, that spoke for the need for social reform. There is a long tradition of social reforms in Maharashtra. The women in Maharashtra, as compared to many other Indian states, entered the public sphere much earlier, got the opportunity for education and higher education much earlier. So they were there in the public life for a very, very long time. The very first slide which I made for this particular presentation, you will find that even in the very movement for the creation of the state of Maharashtra, women were there. This slide, you will find that here I have, of course, shown the figures who are more or less contemporary. But you will find that right from 1960s, there were many women, even before the women's movement started, there were many women who were actively involved in the social movements and various kinds of activism that was happening in the state. So that makes the question very, very critical. The question over here, why women are underrepresented in the state politics in Maharashtra, because you have a long legacy of social reform. Women are already there in public sphere. They were already part of various social movements that took place in 50s and 60s, whether that was the Adivasi agitations in Shahada or the Navanirman Andolan that was basically happening in Gujarat, but the repercussions or the parallel, you also get to see something like Chhatra Yuva Sangharsha Vahini or Yuvak Kranti Dal kind of organizations were formed over here in Maharashtra. Women were always very active in the socialist forum like Rashtra Seva Dal, and later when we get to see that the 1970s, all kinds of agitations started first with the Mathura rape case and later the anti-dowry agitations. We get to see that large number of women were there and they represented various shades of feminists' ideas. So our host for today, Vibhuti ma'am, was part of these 1970s anti-dowry agitation. She has seen the women's movement evolving and raising and basically as a force to reckon with, and how that contributed in giving us quite reformative kind of laws. Of course, there were various different demands which were not attended to, but still what existed prior to this was something which was atrocious and was taking away women's rights. Uh, it was in the 1970s and early 80s with these women's participation, with this women's agitations, the famous street play Mulgi Zali Ho, and all these the staging of these street plays across Maharashtra. Um, we find that women's movement was a big force. We also get to see that parallelly around this time, there had emerged another organization. The organization was basically talking about the fair price for agricultural produce, and that movement was led by Sharad Joshi. Shetkari Sangatna is the organization, but the Shetkari Sangatna had made uh, uh, categorically paid attention to women's political participation and had created Lakshmi Mukti panels contesting local bodies elections. And some of you might have also read the famous report by Vishakha Datta, and Who Will Make Chapatis, where she talks about the all women gram panchayats in Maharashtra, which came much before the 33% reservation. So what the point that I'm trying to make over here is that had it been the case that these women's organizations wouldn't have been there, had it been the case that like many other Indian states, women wouldn't have entered the public life, they wouldn't have been part of the the social movements and the various kinds of agitations that happened in the post-independent period, then the figures which we saw over here wouldn't have really caused any concern for us. My concern, my question, and the critical question which I feel one needs to ask is this, that despite the fact that we get to see so many women's who were present in public life, they were politically active. Remember, if we understand politics in a very parochial, narrow sense as only the activities concerning the state, or to further stretch this particular meaning to interpret it as activities associated with electoral politics, then of course these women were never part of the electoral politics, but they were part of different kind of politics. They were part of various kinds of interventions, and that intervention was for redistribution of resources. That intervention was for legal reforms. That intervention was for uh, for dignity and honor, and equal space in public life. So there was some kind of a churning that was already happening in Maharashtra in form of women's movement and various other social movements. These the names that I mentioned over here, as I said, are more contemporary, and they are leading various social movements. Ulka Mahajan, for instance, is leading Sarvahara Jana Andolan, or Pratima Pardeshi is associated with Satyashodak Mahila Aghadi. So these are the women who basically are there. Medha Patkar, of course, you know about Narmada Andolan, but there are many agitations associated with the rights of displaced people, which she has been associated with. And similarly, many other women whose names I haven't mentioned over here. They're active in public life. Now, the critical question, when I'm asking that critical question, that despite their participation, despite their activism, why we get to see that the percentage of women in assemblies, percentage of women in the various party candidates is more or less similar to other states. When I'm asking this question, there is another dimension which we need to take into consideration. And that is very important, because everything can be blamed on the political parties. We also need to keep in mind the positions that was taken by these movements, whether women's movement or various other social movements. What was this? This was some kind of a dilemma of women in non-party democratic politics. So I'm calling this as women in non-party democratic politics. Why? As I said, if we keep aside the parochial meaning of politics as activities associated only with electoral politics, and take into consideration the broader definition on politics, then these women are not just social activists, but they are political activists as well. But what is the dilemma that these women in non-party democratic politics were facing? It's because most of these movements very consistently decided not to join electoral politics. Something that was also called as being apolitical. That was not apolitical. That's not, personally, I don't feel that's not apolitical, because I personally believe that politics has a broader dimension, and it is not just associated with state, but it has cultural dimension, it has ethical, moral dimension, it has dimension associated with redistribution of resources, titles, honors, cultural symbols, and so many other factors. So taking into consideration that broader dimension, this kind of a democratic politics was really very crucial for the health of Indian democracy. But and that's the reason I'm not calling it a political. But whatever kind of politics that was that they were doing, one thing for sure, that many of them had decided is that they will not join the electoral politics. So when we are saying that these people never really paid attention to the women activists who were already present in the public life. We can't blame them entirely because these women were not really ready to join electoral politics. So that's the reason we can't really entirely blame the political parties for not including them. But the point that I'm making over here is that we don't really want the same women to join the politics. They can make this choice. We don't want Vibhuti ma'am to contest election. That's her personal choice. If she wants to contest election, then what is a completely different issue, which also I'll be discussing little later. The fact of the matter is that when so much of churning is taking place at social level, may not individually Chaya Datar or Vibhuti Patel or Gail Ombet or Sharada Sathe would contest election, but whether that churning which was taking place in the society with the rise of the women's movement or these kinds of social movements, why didn't it create any kind of potential political leadership in women? Why it didn't really provided possible candidates for the political parties to choose from? And that basically is something which one needs to ask both to the movements and to the political parties. Here, I would refer to one very interesting article by Shireen Rai, who wrote this article sometime closer to the coming of the 33% reservation, the very first attempt, even when the other states had not, Maharashtra was one of the first states to start with 33% reservation for women. And where Shireen Rai writes that all these years, when we were part of social life, when we were part of social movements, we fought against the state. We interrogated the state. We wanted the state to behave differently. We wanted the state to, to represent our voices, but we never trained ourselves to join the state. We always considered that our arena is something which is outside the state. No, it can't really be outside the state. But if you take into consideration as governmental activities or activities related to parties, then what she says could be applied to that aspect. In the sense, you are not trying to be part of the state. You want the state to change, but you are emerging as a force. That force will make the state choose a more equitable kind of a path. So that is the line which was taken by all these social movements and basically by the women of the movements. Now, suddenly, when the state opens up some kind of Pandora's box where the representation is offered to the women, we are actually not prepared to take up that responsibility, because we have always been critically interrogating the state. Now, take the responsibility and uh, come up with policies, or to 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 be part of the state is something which is very challenging, which is very different. So on the one hand, we definitely do find that the social movements, the women from the social movements and women's movement were not really prepared to uh, to take this challenge of joining the government and being part of the state, and to come up with policies. But do we then blame only the movements for that, that they never really considered this dimension, or they never really tried to create that kind of a leadership? I personally feel we can't really blame the women's movement entirely for that. And the reason I'll talk about it, uh, the factor what we need to consider that it's not about blaming one factor or the other. It's about understanding how the processes which unleash in a certain fashion create a scenario where the women don't get represented in electoral politics, don't get included in the party politics or as members of the state machinery. So on the one hand, you get to see that political parties are not very keen in including the women who do not come from political families, because there could be certain names, and I'm often reminded of the name of one person called Suryakanta Patil. Some of you might have heard of her because she was a Minister for State in Manmohan Singh's cabinet in the first UPA 1 phase. She had some distant relation in some to somebody in politics, but she was more or less came on her own. But she almost disappeared in politics. And reasons are, there are of course speculation, journalistic kind of speculation. So as a researcher, I can't really include those kinds of things which are said in press. But why she was or why women from political parties were preferred over somebody like Suryakanta Patil, who doesn't come from a political background. Or in case of Mumbai, you might have heard about the stories of Shobha Raul. Shobha Raul was mayor of Mumbai, but whatever she was saying, whatever issues that she had raised, were not paid attention to over the preferences that was given to people who have more political lineage as such. So the fact of the matter is that on the one hand, you have political parties that are more keen on giving representation, giving party nominations to the women. And generally, it's not just women, generally it is everybody from political families. But when it comes to women, it's very striking that you can't imagine somebody like R.R. Patil coming entirely without any background and reaching that stage of becoming Deputy Chief Minister and Home Minister of Maharashtra. That kind of example we don't come across in case of women. That's why I'm saying that though it happens generally in politics, in case of women, we will have to take special care of that, special notice of that. Women from political parties are preferred by political parties over the women who come from social movement. And on the other hand, which actually confirms this approach of political parties, is that the social movements are not really very keen on training women to join electoral politics or to join party politics. But is this just end of the story? Is it something that tells about the two dimensions of the same process? No, there is another very there is another third dimension, and which I feel is more serious. And as academicians, as activists, as people who are committed to democratic values, I think the more challenging work that possibly all of us will have to do would be related to this third dimension, which I'll be talking now. The third dimension is how do voters, how do citizens understand politics? And here I will take two examples. One example is of the same study that I mentioned of the women Gram Panchayats, the study by Vishakha Datta, and Who Will Make Chapatis is the title of that book, where Lakshmi Mukti Sangatna had offered all women panels for Gram Panchayat elections. And we see that there were 8 or 9 gram panchayats in Maharashtra, or little, sorry, I forgot the number, but good amount of representation we get to see happen. And this was in 80s. And the study of Vishakha Datta basically talks about 4 such gram panchayats. And these women did remarkably well. They built roads, they added more rooms to the school, and whatever was basically needed by that village was attended to. Until that point, the 30% reservation had not come. So after the completion of the tenure of 5 years, when the elections were announced again, in this study, the researcher asked the villagers that independent of these kinds of panels, because the panels were given in the previous election, this time they are not giving panels. But if some of these women who had become sarpanch or were members of the panchayat, if they contest, will you vote for them? And the answers that was given by the villagers was that these women don't understand politics. What they did was social work. That was not politics. So here, what I'm trying to say is that how do citizens understand politics? What is politics? If the politics is something that is different from what these women did, then how do we face this challenge is a critical question. Now, remember, as I said, there are 2 examples which I'll be giving. And the first one which I gave was that of these Lakshmi Mukti Sarpanch. The second example is that of some of these women. In 2014, you will find that Medha Patkar, Pratibha Shinde, at least these 2 I remember, they contested elections. And Medha Patkar, I remember because a couple of years before that, she had organized the slum dwellers of Mumbai. And I had attended one of her rallies, and I remember there were thousands of women from slums who had attended her rally. But if you see how many votes did she get, she was contesting from the same area where she had organized the slum dwellers. Did all the slum dwellers vote for her? No, the voting percentage was very, very small. Same happened in case of Pratibha Shinde, who was organizing Adivasi women, Adivasi men, Adivasis basically, of Nandurbar for a very long time, more than 2 decades she's with them. But when she contested in 2014, the vote share that she got was very small. And remember, this is not just with women, but a very early case, the very first election of first general election of 1952, when SM Joshi had contested for Lok Sabha from Pune, where he actually had built lots of unions, including the unions of defense accounts. The number of votes that he secured was less than the membership of the union that he had built. This is consecutive trend even in Mumbai, where there were lots of left-wing and socialist unions were built over here. The unions of the mill workers were built. But when it's an issue associated with their work, something which the trade unions would represent, they would come to that leadership. But when they had to vote for general elections, for Lok Sabha or for Vidhan Sabha or for local bodies, they would go and vote for that point of time. It was Congress, later now whichever party is of choice. So that is something which is a very very important question, very significant question, and also a very difficult question to answer, that what is the way out? When you know that a person is committed, when you know that a person is trustworthy, when you know that for all your problems, from all your material interests, for your occupational interests, you would go to these people, and you would, whenever it's a matter of justice, social justice, you would approach these activists. But when it's about electoral politics, you are not really voting for them. Then how do we resolve this? Because here what we saw is that, if, first of all, women without party affiliations do not secure a large number of votes, women without the background of political families rarely get elected. It's not that they won't get elected, but there is more assurance that when you have some political affiliation, your family is in politics for a long number of years, uh, that has shown that women generally get elected. So how do we break this chakravyuh? How do we break this trend that those who are in politics, but they are part of uh, mm, what I would say as Sangharsh ki Rajniti, or the politics that challenges the state, the politics that challenges the state policies, interrogates the state. Those women are not preferred to represent, or very rarely preferred. And on the other hand, the political parties are not really keen to include the women who do not come from political families. What is the way out? Now, one, uh, I'm not saying solution as such, but one case, one example that I would take, which is strikingly different from this, and which possibly could show us a ray of hope and also a direction to understand politics, understand how women could be included in politics. And that is the uh, sorry, this slide I'll show. Okay, before that, sorry, this is just one slide which I forgot to talk about, and then I'll move to my last slide. Those who have done political science, or those who have done sociology, possibly have seen this earlier. This is basically the David Easton's idea of political system, and the addition that was made to this was by Gabriel Armand, where he talks about structural functionalism and talks about the structures of interest articulation and interest aggregation. This is something which I'll connect with. Somehow the sequence of slides is actually is wrong over there. So sorry for this confusion. I'll talk about it later, but just keep these slides in mind. I'll come to this later. So as I was saying, a way out to this problem that parties are not including women outside political families, and women from movements, when they contest, are do not secure sufficient amount of vote. Is there any ray of hope? Is there any way out? And to this, I was talking about this case of Mrinal Gore. So you will find that Mrinal Gore, those who are from Mumbai would know her. Mrinal Gore was part of India's freedom movement, and she was very, very young. In fact, to join freedom movement, she left her studies halfway through. She was doing medicine, but in the second year itself, she left her college and joined the freedom movement. Later, she joined socialist politics, was part of various agitations, various issues that were taken up by the socialists, groups and socialist organizations in Mumbai. She was somebody because of whom the people of the northern suburbs, northern Mumbai, particularly the part from Goregaon to Borivali, the people over there, they got tapped water, and that's why the name, she was famous in this area, was Pani Wali Bai. Pani Dene Wali Aurat was the name with which she had become popular. She represented, uh, she was elected to Goregaon Gram Panchayat, because that point of time Goregaon was not included as part of Mumbai Municipal Corporation. So first she was elected in Gram Panchayat. Later she was elected to Mumbai Municipal Corporation. She was elected to Maharashtra Vidhan Sabha, and she was also elected to the Lok Sabha. So that transition from local level to national politics is something that we get to see in case of Mrinal Gore. Also, while she was member of the Socialist Party and its various factions, which later whatever happened within the Socialist Party, she was also very deeply connected with women's movement and various other kind of social movements. So we get to see that towards the later part of her life, she was even trying to organize the Anganwadi Sevikas. Prior to that, she had also built certain kinds of creches, balwadis, or some groups, some training centers for women homemakers, or whatever kind of support groups that they needed. So she was part of women's movement, she was part of social movement, she was part of a political party, and her transition we get to see from local level politics to national politics. Now, why she could do this? One of the very important reason is that she didn't see this in fragments. Her approach to politics was inclusive, comprehensive. And second very important reason is that the way her party supported her, the way her leadership was accepted, and independent of her gender, um, her leadership was acceptable. She was accepted not like I mentioned earlier, like a poster girl, that we need to have a woman representative. So let's accept Mrinal Tai as a woman leader. So she was a woman that was an additional factor, but she was acceptable as a leader. She was somebody who took up the issues of urban dwellers, somebody who started this Nagari Nivara Parishad issue of urban housing she had taken up. And as I said, she had also taken up issues of women. She had taken up large number of issues of common people. And she could emerge from local leader to a national level, somebody who would participate in national level politics. A very long span of career, certainly. But the factor that we get to see in her case is that she is somebody uh, who represented various forms of politics: agitational politics, politics of social movement, as well as party politics. And also, as I said, that her party supported her, the party accepted her leadership. And that's the point which I basically wanted to make over here. When we talk about these concept of political system, this is generally how we understand politics, that there are demands are converted into laws and policies, and then they're floated back into the society. And if people accept the policies, then they support the system. And if they don't accept the policies, then there are newer demands. So that's basically the idea of political system. It's like it's question, it has its own debates. I'm not going into those issues here. But a more detailed kind of explanation of this comes from Gabriel Armand, where he talks about basically the structures that send the demands to the political system and the structures who again float the policies back in the environment. So what are the structures? And here my attention, I want the attention, I want to focus the attention to these two structures: interest articulation and interest aggregation. So what we saw here, these are the structures of interest articulation, the social movements. What did they do? They did the job of expressing the demands, locating the problems, and then talking about the possible solution, possible changes that they want. And they earlier had made it clear that they want to perform the role of interest articulation, the structure in form of social movements. So they were not interest group or pressure groups the way they exist in American politics that would do lobbying. They have their own ways, but basically they try to build pressure on the system to deliver, to create some kind of policies. So they had basically defined their field, they had defined their role, that we would perform the function of interest articulation, this particular function. Now, who performs the function of interest aggregation? And here what we get to see is that it is the political party that is expected to perform the function of interest aggregation. So all our problems basically end to this particular structure. They basically show only one direction, and that is the nature and the structure of political party. So it's not the case that women are not there in the structure of interest articulation. They are there in form of social in social movements. But if the structures of interest aggregations are dominated by the dominant interest, and here you will find what are the dominant interests. In the gender terms, it is the male, and in terms of caste, it is the dominant caste. If they are the ones who are controlling the structures of interest aggregation, then whatever may happen at this level would never reach over here, would never get represented over here, either in forms of demands or in forms of the people who actually create laws and policies. Because these structures have not really been democratized. And that is the reason when we are discussing this regional dynamics of Maharashtra, which, as I said, is different in one sense, not in the other way, not in the way women are represented in electoral politics or in assemblies, but in other way where we get to see that there are large number of women who have participated in non-party democratic politics. Why the women from non-party democratic politics don't emerge as a force? The problem here is that the structures of interest articulation are not, the structures of interest aggregation are not really democratized. And that is the reason what we get to see that the women do not really enter the corridors of power. I think the case of Maharashtra proves this, that the work that one needs to do is mainly at the level of political party. And once that is done, possibly it will also help to change the political culture, the texture of the political culture. Because something that I said just now, that the way citizens, voters understand politics also needs to be changed, or we also need to work at that level. So that is also something which would get initiated when the structures of domination which exist in forms of political parties are challenged and are democratized. So that is basically the point which I wanted to make with my presentation. Um, I think I've taken about hour to make my point. Um, uh, I think I will be able to answer um, the questions. I'll talk more when I think you ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your enlightening session. Your comprehensive analysis of regional dynamics and women's political leadership has provided us with valuable perspectives on this critical topic and its implication for governance and gender empowerment. I would now like to invite Professor Vibhuti Patelji and Professor M. Indra to share their reflections and remarks on the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Professor Indra, would you like to go first?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I'm not competent enough because I'm not from political science, I'm not from sociology. But you made it extremely clear about why there is less women in politics active. So thank you so much for your very, very illuminating presentation. And what I understand is that women from those who have some political, I mean, I will put it in a simple way. Those who have some political affiliation, family background, so they have an advantage over others. And second point that I understand is that despite having so much of political, I mean, so much of movements, women's movements in Maharashtra, despite that, we don't see so many women entering into active political arena. And I also observed that in Kerala also, you find that, there is high level of literacy levels. But even there also, I observed that in Kerala, you have only 7.86% of women in this one assembly. So that is one more thing. And the third point that you mentioned is that how do citizens understand so that gives me another understanding that, all our 74% reservation and women, encouraging more women into the governance at the grassroots level is not actually translating into bringing women into at the higher level. So, and you also very well spoke about the structures. And it is very, very nicely explained. And structures are not democratized. This is the main thing. So, and we also did a little bit of studies. And what we understand is women are capable of participating. They're interested in participating. But, they're not getting ticket. That is what in our area, what we observed when we did some studies on political empowerment of women, why they are not participating despite having the capability of entering into the politics. So it's a very, very illuminating and lecture. So I just want to ask you, do you think that providing reservation in the by the political parties, whether it makes, I mean, internal reservation like quotas for women, so whether that makes any difference? Like, if you take in Karnataka, Shobha Karandlaje, all of you know, she is the one, and she comes from RSS, and as long as the BJP government was in power, and now, of course, she is in central. So whether that kind of matters are very important. But if political parties can give some internal quota, whether it makes any difference or it makes easy for women to participate. Your comments. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Shall I answer or shall I answer in the end? Vibhuti ma'am?
Yeah, you can answer.
Okay. Yeah, that could be one way of ensuring. But again, the same kind of arrangement is likely to come up, in the sense, even in that case, the reservation within the party, the women from political background would get accommodated. So what I feel uh, could be one way is more dialogue between the women of social movements and the women who are in parties, who are in electoral politics, and how the women from social movement can empower the women in political parties. Um, there are lots of issues, because also trust needs to be established. It should not happen and I definitely feel that it just because somebody is a woman, there is no need to believe that she would be ethically or morally superior as such. Even she can use social movements to her advantage without really addressing their concerns. So that trust needs to be built, but some kind of a dialogue, if that takes place, and women's of social movement try to empower the women in political parties and stand behind them as a social force, then that could help them while negotiating with the party bosses, that see, I have this kind of a support, and you need to give me party nomination. That kind of a bargain, or there is a possibility of me getting elected. Because winnability is the word which
Yes,
political
winnability, yes.
parties use
Yes.
and don't
Yeah.
really give tickets. So that could be one way of empowering the women in electoral politics.
Money also, no, money also, like, why women are not this is my my feeling, that money also matters. You need to spend a lot of money, and because of that also women from moment they are not entering into.
Yes.
Yeah.
And money, and also because I got chance of interacting with um, uh, um, teaching faculty from various uh, colleges in rural Maharashtra. And similar kind of session I'd conducted, I think sometime back, 2-3 months back. And which I had actually read about it, but never really thought that it's so significant. But they told me that character assassination is something that they fear so much
Yes.
about, which possibly, like, we don't really care, or care little about these things, or we possibly have that kind of have trained ourselves not really to pay heed to what people say. But even I've worked with these women. There is this group called Mahila Rajsatta Andolan in Maharashtra. So they also, that's a kind of a support group for women in local bodies. So these women from local bodies, they told that whenever there is any kind of a training workshop, and even when we want to have tea, or want to eat, that then we ensure that that hotel doesn't have a lodge, because we fear that if there is a lodge and somebody from our village sees us, they would start saying that possibly she was there in the lodge with somebody who knows that the taluka level leader, she went in the lodge with him, and then she was seen in the hotel. So we avoid such places to go. So in small settings and rural settings and small places where people know each other, like everybody almost knows each other, possibly these things matter a lot. So that kind of a training, that kind of a support, somebody who can actually vouch for you, or could say that don't pay attention to these kinds of things. So that also requires some kind of a mental training as well as a support system. And I think this is a study which Vibhuti ma'am was also part of, that wherever there was support system, the women have delivered well in local bodies. That's the study, that's something which the study has shown. So I think support system is something which is very essential.
Yes.
So the floor is now open for questions from the audience. You can raise hands or type in the Q&A box. Also, fellows can turn on their video and take part in the lively discussion. So please accept the join as panelist and then you can turn on your video.
I would like to comment in that very brilliant presentation, and especially you provided the analytical framework that is very important to understand the complexity of electoral system. First, like it was in 1972 when I was a student and I saw these women from Dhule singing a song Chala Bhai Chala, which was very clearly saying that even for the solution to the problems and the woes of drought which women were facing, they were saying that let us enter politics and continue our struggle and take leadership. Can't put up with patriarchal power anymore. Oh, Venubai, why do you remain repressed? And come out and join our rally. So I think this has been the general sentiment of all the women's organization, who are always very brave, and they are street fighters, and when it comes to fighting against any form of exploitation, degradation, injustice, or even superstition, casteism, communalism, on ground they are very good. But when it comes to electoral politics, main problem is this money power, muscle power, mafia power, and misogyny. And I think you brought it out so well. Now, talking about Mrinaltai, like I also worked with Mrinaltai very closely right from 1974 anti-price rise women's movement, because they started a branch in Baroda. And this made the unique character of Mrinaltai was that she was cerebral, she was intellectually endowed, she had an excellent oratory, she had a very strong sense of social justice. She was always at the back and call of the community, whether it was a fire in Bombasti or water shortage or molestation, and even the nurses, some of the high profile campaigns she took up when the nurses in a five-star hospital were harassed by the Arab sheikhs, no, who were not using it as hospital, the 10th floor of Just Look Hospital, which was used only for whenever we had only one five-star hotel at the time, Taj. So they would check in and harass women. Fight against change of the uniform of nurses. They did not want to wear skirt because that was lifted by some predators, and they wanted to wear either sari or salwar. All these small day-to-day issues also she had taken up. Plus, she had such a big following of intellectually endowed professional women. So women writers, women journalists, women teachers, women filmmakers, everybody, she was always in touch. So they also created an aura about her. And the most important, when she was imprisoned during 18 months of emergency and kept with the lunatics and hardcore murderers. No, she was not treated as a political prisoner. The news of all these things also galvanized people like us who would otherwise keep miles of distance from mainstream politics. We were campaigning for her. So I think that is also very important thing, that both, and she always kept herself abreast. She would attend women's studies conferences also. She would come to IWS and she would interact with the Basti level, and always was surrounded by so many women. So even the hardcore Gudda politician also she could face, because she was always protected. She traveled by public transport. We bumped into Mrinaltai in the women's compartment of local trains. Where do you see a politician like that? Who would just, and someone out of just respect, she would get up. In fact, when I got up to my daughter, she was the one who would grab. First, she would get into it, grab the seat, and say, "Mama, Mama, come," and she would sit on my lap. When I got up, she said, "Mama, why are you giving this? Wait, she's not your mom." I said, "No, she's everybody's mom." So I think that was the kind of respect she enjoyed. No, so you don't even get those type of politicians, because now they are only surrounded by their muscle man. There is no direct access to politician for the common people, which Mrinaltai had. It was a unique characteristic she had. That she's one of us. We can touch her. We can go near her. We can tell any problem of her to her, and she will never abuse our trust. No, so that was an excellent quality, that she unique personality. and across the community, because in city like Bombay, she was not popular only among Maharashtrians. Everybody in Mumbai, whether they were Christians or Muslims or Dalits or Gujaratis or Punjabis, all of them respected her. So that communication skill and doing also, not only talking, but even the way she stood by them at the time of crisis. Even when they declared the new road as a Mahasati road, and we just approached her, I said, what is this? We are against glorification of Sati. Immediately after Devrala in 87, so many Sati temples came came out in Bombay. I mean, more than 50 Sati temples in every corner. And we young feminists, we told them, she did not brush it aside. She said, oh, I did not know about it. And they were going to make that road, Mahasati road, no, in Mala. She immediately joined us and protested. Or even in the case of PCP and ETH, she said, these are the new issues for me, even injectable contraceptives. If you can come to my house at 7 in the morning and brief me what it is. I said, Murata, we are approaching you because you have a medical background. Others would just see it, other women activists or politicians, they may not understand the nuances while you can. And she immediately, once she was convinced, she raised this issue in the as a member of legislative. She presented the private members bill. So that readiness to do a hardcore research and communicate it in a popular language and convincing the fellow politician, that kind of ability, we need this thing. And maybe because of her experience of active participation in freedom movement, she had that confidence. But I think we need women politicians of that caliber. And now, at least about reservation, second thing, that even in European Union, the European countries, scenario changed only after quota. When European Union declared 40% reservation quota for women, then you saw the whole change in the political culture. So I think let us now focus our attention on Women's Reservation Act. I would like to know from you that what future do you see? Because by 2029, it will be implemented. So should we invest and channelize our energy in mentoring these women who have had a 5, 6, 7 rounds of PRI elections, and they know now the nitty-gritty of governance? Should we should we focus more attention to deal with the larger constituencies of parliament and legislative assembly? Governance is quite complex in today's government.
Yeah. So some of them, very few actually got the second tenure, but those who got second tenure or those who are keen in continuing in politics, one thing is like one should invest in them, one should help them as a support group. But as I said, to get them included, also one needs to work with the political parties. And some pressure needs to be built on political parties that unless you include women who do not necessarily come from political backgrounds, will not vote for you. That kind of a some pressure needs to be, some kind of negotiation needs to take place, I think, with the political parties, with the high bosses of the political parties, or at least some assurance from or all party meet, something of that sort, maybe could be convened by women's groups, to build some kind
That's
of
a
a
good
pressure.
idea.
Yeah.
That's a very good idea. Inviting all political parties, especially because all of them have women's wing.
Yeah.
They have a Mahila Park, yeah. So, and then, because they
And
have,
what
at least
happens
in
is, I've
parliament, they have
seen,
supported, no, 33%.
yeah.
So now
No,
they have to
again,
prove it in
in
action.
case of NCP, I've seen like very regular meets they have, like their women wings. But what do they actually do? It's something which is mysterious, because I've seen like even in Patkar Hall of SNDT, almost every year in Mumbai, I've seen them meeting, and I also kind of tried to get crash and enter and see, but then they were like very keen on not letting other people enter and see what happens, because I felt like if you are actually working with them, still why is it the case that we get to see only those familiar faces from political families getting party nominations. And for these melawas, there are like large number of women who attend this. Like Patkar Hall is full always. So
no, even that Nagpur Medava, more than 5,000 women were there. That was by that was by Congress, and Najma Heptullah, she was at that time was keynote address. I was called only to speak on budget. So, but it was a very big Medava, and these women had really been the foot soldiers of their political parties, doing a lot of work in the bastis and mobilizing women for all those big rallies and all that.
yeah.
But I think the investment in them, that was not
And
about the
another
government.
interesting thing while interacting with this women from Mahila Raj Satta Andolan is that I found is, of course, and local bodies, they don't have, it's like not a party nomination, but still, like formally, even if they're like not nominated by party, they certainly have party affiliations or preferences, or at least the families that they belong to have some kind of political background, connection with political parties, but they help each other independent of their ideological and party affiliation.
That is true. Yeah.
And that is something which I found very fascinating, that this is like central government ka ye policy aa raha hai, this form is required, so have you filled this form for your gram panchayat, and this is the funding which you are likely to get, and all, and then they help each other. That is very
Yeah, even the travel plans, they organize in coordination with each other. When they go out, they coordinate, even if they are in different political parties, but that goodwill and care and concern for each other as women, that I also.
So the fellows can, yes, ma'am.
Any
So
questions or anything from your state, your regional experience, if you want to share something?
Yes, may I ask a question, ma'am?
Yeah.
Please.
Ma'am, my question is that in developing countries, the representation of women is quite good. On the contrary, if we look into the developed countries, and though there is isn't gender disparity like ours, but still women are not on the top positions. In India, in Pakistan, and other countries where women they have been able to even turtle the power also. Benazir Bhutto was there, and then she had though been there for 2 tenures also, though she was not able to complete her tenure. And here also Indira Gandhi and so many other people,
Lanka,
women are on top
Bangladesh.
positions. So, should something? What is your take on this? That there should be some international such moments or some platforms ought to be there that women need to unite.
I think forums already exist, and international conferences, they have been like taking place with the initiatives from international organizations. So that is something which is already happening. Rather, you will find that even the very issue of reservation for women, it's something which was discussed first at international level. It didn't come from women's movement as such. It was rather, it came from some kind of a policy directive from the UN related organizations, and then that was taken up by various consecutive governments. But what the question that you are saying, that even when the developing countries, the percentage of women is comparatively higher than in developed countries, you will see that there are countries where there could be 50% reservation, or the percentage of women in parliament is much higher than even country like India. But also one needs to ask a question, is what is the quality of that representation? I'm not saying that everybody who's there is just a dummy or just for the namesake, but that one, I think, needs to study, and we don't have that kind of a data available at the moment, where we need to see that where the percentage of women in politics is higher, what role do they perform? Um, what kind of autonomy do they have? These kinds of questions need to be asked. Also, one needs to see that even where the women are assertive, they have to face so much of difficulties. We don't have data like for the entire period as such, because the data that is available in case of Maharashtra uh, came from a question that was asked in Vidhan Sabha, that there are examples where a no confidence motion was introduced against women serpents, and there's a big number. So to stop that, and that's a I don't have that figure with me this time at the moment, but it's there. It's mentioned in my article. If you see article this women and state politics in Maharashtra, so in that article I mentioned that number. So large number of no confidence motion, even when women are there in politics, they have to face these kinds of motions, and then they're removed because whatever kind of provisions that are there, so they do get elected, but they're not allowed to function. So what quality of uh, participation, what is the nature, what is the level of their participation, or are they there for just because in the international community one particular country wants to show that, see that we have actually complied to the UN direction, so just to confirm that that resolution we have accepted, these kinds of legal changes have been made, or whether women actually are able to voice their demands, or other very significant issue that one needs to ask is something that we call is mainstreaming gender. Mainstreaming gender in the sense that what kind of laws, suppose a woman enters the parliament, but she introduces a law which represents patriarchal mindset, or that confirms the dominant interest, then what is the purpose of women going over there? That's a very critical kind of a question over here, because then somebody would straight away deny the very demand for representation, that women are, if they are not making any qualitative change, then why do you want to send them there? So that's not what we are saying. We want women to get included, and we want women to make qualitative change. So in a way, that's too much of an expectation from the woman, who basically finds it very difficult for us to enter. But then if we have to understand it deeply, then this question also we will have to ask, that what kind of change she brings in, what kind of qualitative change she brings in when she gets represented, or she get included in the assembly.
Ma'am, even in Saudi Arabia, the women have been given right to vote in 2015 only. So there is very minimal participation of women in authoritarian government there also. So if some word organizations are there, they could reinforce and facilitate such sort of participation.
That I don't think would be possible, for the simple reason that here we are talking about sovereign nations. And if you understand the very idea of sovereignty, sovereignty gives the ultimate power to the state, to the nation state, to enact a law, to take decision on every internal as well as external matter. So that's the reason in international politics, the very famous saying in international politics is that international law does not exist. What exists is just international morality. So whatever resolutions that are passed, whatever treaties that are signed, unless and until the legislatures of the respective nation state doesn't really approve of it, that is not binding. And again, amendments could be made to whatever is accepted or whatever is being said at the international level. Because this is something which is different than the way the state machinery deals with individual citizen, and the international organizations would deal with sovereign nation states. Here, though we are autonomous individuals, we are bound by the law. Of course, even if we are punished, we would be punished as per the law provided, but still we are regulated, controlled by the law, and the state is sovereign. That's not the case. United Nations is not sovereign entity, or various agencies of United Nations, or whatever, World Bank or whatever economic forums also, they create some kind of pressure with some kind of financial regulations or those kinds of things, but there are limits. Besides, there are internationally interests of the dominant players in international politics. That also matters, that some law may not be implemented in case of one particular nation state, whether in case of other country it could be implemented because it suits the interest of America. So that kind of things also happen in international politics. So at the most, what the international organizations could do is make an appeal to the countries to accept these kinds of changes or introduce some kind of good practices.
They have only recommendatory power, not mandatory power. They
Yeah.
can only recommend.
Yeah, there hand is raised here.
Yes, sir.
Priyanka Patel.
He,
she's
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
I'm from Kolkata.
Uh,
I'm very focused.
Yeah.
you're not audible. Could you? Voice is
Am I
cracking.
audible now?
Yeah.
Better than before.
Okay. So I come from Kolkata. As ma'am, you were explaining the things on the context of Maharashtra. I was trying to relate it with the West Bengal scenario. One thing which I would like to point out here is that Trinamool Congress TMC is the ruling party here. We see a lot of women representation along with a women CM here. But what I would like to point out here is that I just went through the statistics. In this year's Lok Sabha, Trinamool Congress was the highest, sending 38% of women representation. There were 12 women who had contested, out of them 11 have won. Now, as I was going through as I'm familiar with the names, as I go through the list of the people who have won, and also all of the 12 people only here, as we talk about the 4 M's, which Vibhuti ma'am was also talking about in the first first session, these women already have muscle power, money, and mafia because they are eminent actresses in the Tollywood industry here. Most of them are. Some others have been very effectively in the politics, and I would not call this politics. I would call this the dirty electoral politics from the very beginning. And they have built their money from there. And as well, they have now mafia as well as muscle power. So what I feel lacks here is what we genuinely need is that is a Dalit woman or a minority woman coming out, a Santhali woman from West Bengal sitting in the Lok Sabha, or even if I'm not talking about the Lok Sabha, even if the Vidhan Sabha, that is what is really lacking. And to be very frank, even under a woman CM, it is very disheartening, but I don't see it happening anytime soon, even when this party is here, because of all of the other things that's going on. So this is something which disheartens us. But and also one more thing, I feel, why do the women who are very actively and by heart who are social activists, who are into social movements, why do they not come into politics? I feel they have seen the naked dirty politics, and which is why there's some kind of hate that I can do whatever, but I am not going to, like non-negotiables. I am not going to do this, and I'm not going to be in electoral politics. Definitely not there. I don't see myself there. That is something I feel which fixates into a woman's mind when she has constantly fought against this electoral politics. Every day of her life, she has received threats when she is voicing herself, when she's being the voice of the voiceless. She has been constantly threatened, and she has never got that inclusive. She was also working for the society, and the political party was also made to work for the society as well, for the welfare. The motto of all of them was, it's ideally to be welfare, but she was working towards welfare while the political parties were not, and they came into her path and then they have messed up things. So I feel that is one reason why we can say why popular women faces in social field, in the social field, social activists don't tend to go into the electoral active politics which we see. That was all from my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Aishi. Yeah, what you say is like, I agree with most of what you said, but there is something which I would like to add. The critical question over here is what do we do with the state? And if at the end of the day, it is the state which is going to be the agent that would distribute the resources, that would, as Easton says, the word that he uses, the term that he uses is authoritative allocation of values. And it could be, when I'm saying authoritative allocation of values, it's not just the distribution and redistribution of resources, but also culturally. How do you prioritize what values are celebrated? How the entire cultural sphere is organized? Um, what kind of values, patriarchal values, misogyny, authoritarianism, violence, and you name it, and everything. At the end of the day, it is, if that's something which is navigating through the agency called state, then one will have to make a choice, because though politics is dirty, unless and until you don't enter that dirty water, how that water would become clean? That is one very significant question. And whether you want to clean it or you don't want to clean it, the fact of the matter, as I said, is that is the agency which actually shapes the society, shapes the political culture. And when one is talking about, uh, particularly when intervenes through social movements, one is talking about distribution, redistribution, and that's exactly what the state is meant for. Then how long can you actually stay away from the state, or how, what is it that you will achieve by avoiding the state? That is the question. And also something which I've found, and that's something which social movements, when they prefer to call themselves as apolitical, or when they very openly and knowingly took the position that they will not join the electoral politics, I found that there is also some kind of a sense of moral superiority. And that is also very harmful, because politics is again all about the word which is often used is loka sangraha. It's basically mobilizing people, bringing them together, creating that kind of a social force. So that sense of moral superiority or moral ahankar, and that is called as Vinoba calls that as supta ahankar, because that's something, that ahankar of being morally superior. So that one doesn't always recognize, like, doesn't even recognize that I actually have that ahankar, because I feel like I'm morally so superior than you. But see, I didn't even ask for power. I had no intention to get power, positions of power, and it's just commitment that I'm doing this. But that commitment is, we respect that commitment, but that is not solving the problem, because the decisions are taken by somebody else. And if you want the right decisions to be taken, then you will have to deal with that structure which actually makes the decision, which redistribute the resources. So basically, all these questions, all these issues take us to a more fundamental question, and that is the role of state in our lives. How much we may talk about civil society, how much we may think in terms of autonomous space that is independent of the state. The fact of the matter is that it is the state which does all kind of distribution and redistribution of resources. So you can't really stay away from state. And that is the reason all these questions become very important, that those who are already there, how are you going to deal with them? What you rightly pointed out, like all they have, like you said, like they have all kind of M's with them, money mafia, etc., etc. Those kinds of studies also have taken place. Like there is one interesting study which was done by somebody from Mumbai University, where he studied Kalyan Dombivli Municipal Corporation. And can you believe, when for local bodies elections, the sanctioned amount for like the amount that you can spend electoral expenses is 5 lakhs. And in Kalyan Dombivli Municipal Corporation elections, there were crores, some 10 crores of rupees. 10 crores of rupees for municipal elections somebody was able to spend. And what is the profession of most of the corporators, as they are called, members of municipal corporation? Most of them had some connection with the real estate. And that was the reason they wanted to join politics. What is your motivation in joining politics? Because they are already in real estate. They're either builders or real estate agents or some kind of land mafia. And with joining politics, they can alter, because local bodies, again, then there's the ceiling or whatever kind of licenses and all those things, one wants as per their convenience. And that's the reason they join politics. So they are there for their own vested interests, their limited interests, they're there. But when we are thinking in terms of larger issues, for instance, it could be the issue of urban planning, it could be issue of environmental degradation in urban setups and these kinds of issues, then you can't really stay away, because you can't really say that just by building pressure through social movements, we will be successful in achieving what we want. And that's the dilemma, that even when staying apolitical is something which has its own merits, it has not served the purpose the way we wanted it to. To a certain extent, it was successful. At least the character of the state was different in 60s, 70s, and 80s. But since the character of the state has started changing, whether we have that option not to operate within the domain of the state is itself questionable. That's, I think, would be my response.
Yeah. Yes. So, Akanksha, you can go next with the question.
And my question is related to token representation of women. And since in Bihar also we have seen during Rabri Devi's rule, we have had like this token, her representation as CM was, it was of course a token representation. So my question is like these women who are token representatives and are given these traditional portfolios, whether they are from so-called general category or SC, ST or OBCs. So is it so they are not seen as able enough, or is it the glass ceiling which is deliberately keeping them away from positions of power in politics? Or what is the reason? Why are they being kept as token representatives? What is the reason?
The reason is very simple, that the political class always wants to create the impression of inclusiveness without actually being inclusive. So the portfolios that are very significant, for instance, it could be finance, it could be home. So these kinds of portfolios, or in national politics, it could be defense. So very rarely women get appointed. In national politics now we have example of Nirmala Sitharaman, or earlier when Sushma Swaraj was there, she was handed over this portfolio of foreign affairs.
Yes, ma'am. So my question is exactly related to that. Is I'm asking, is it because these women are not seen as able enough, or is it because the glass ceiling is deliberately keeping them away from? Because if we see Nirmala Sitharaman, I think she is doing a great job. Whether it was Sushma Swaraj, I think she was doing a great job. She was widely respected for her body of work. Nirmala Sitharaman has that financial knowledge or the economic knowledge, whatever. She is well respected. Nobody ever pointed out any gaps in her knowledge or of work. So, is it that these token representatives, whether it is in Bihar or in any other state, are they not seen as able enough, or are they not able enough because they are being kept away from politics? Is it the gap in their education or their knowledge?
No, not really. The
Because
thing is, it's not
and
about.
that could be because of any number of reasons. There might be social reasons to be blamed
But
for
also
that.
stakes are high, no, now. In any
See,
position, stakes
yeah.
are high. Now
So,
India
but
is
the thing
going
is,
for a growth path.
when there are more influential leaders in the party who are to be accommodated, they would never settle for a ministry like social welfare or women and child welfare. There is so much of competition within the party. If
Which
there are,
portfolio?
for instance, 2 or 3 persons contesting for the portfolio of chief ministership, so only one will become the chief minister. The second will have to be settled with deputy chief minister or finance or home. So whether there is a able woman in the party or not, is not a question. The woman could be very able, but she could be settled with just any kind of a portfolio, because she doesn't really have that kind of a, as long as she doesn't have that kind of a political influence, she can't be a nuisance value. There is no possibility that she will leave the party and along with her she will take some 10-15 MLAs and will join some other coalition. Then you can settle her with some portfolio. You can also simultaneously create an impression of inclusiveness. So that's how generally has been the trend, generally has been how women are accommodated in politics. What we get to see in case of these 2-3 names that we mentioned just now, whether Nirmala Sitharaman or Sushma Swaraj. Now, of course, their ability, their competence is something which is definitely there. But there is also another dimension to this. In case of Sushma Swaraj, it was argued at that particular point of time that basically the possible competitors were, in a way, were kept away from the domestic politics. And basically, to keep her away from the domestic politics, she was given uh, external affairs. That is one journalistic interpretation. I'm not saying that could be the reason. But again, in her case, or previously, even Indira Gandhi had got this foreign affairs. But couple of such exceptions are always there. The general trend is that women generally get information and broadcasting, education, or social welfare. In case of Nirmala Sitharaman, also it is said that economy, the whatever problems that economy was facing, there was somebody was required to take the blame. And
the decisions are taken by PMO, no?
Yeah.
All the decisions of a
Decisions
major
are taken by
MOUs
the PMO, and she's there to take the blame.
And that started from Dr. Manmohan Singh's time only. You had a finance minister, but the decisions were taken by Prime Minister's office. Which country to have which kind of trade relations, which MOUs to be signed, what kind of new alliances that would be created in keeping into consideration geopolitical situations.
Ma'am, is this also a reason why so many women social activists or those related to social movements choose to stay away from party politics? Because entering party politics means being part of the vested interests of the party, which again alters the whole motive of, like you once you are in politics, then you are no longer able to carry on your social agenda, because then your main motive is the vested interest of the political party. then the then the social change or the cause which you are standing for becomes secondary. Ma'am, Vibhuti ma'am, because you have been part, like you have had first-hand experience of these social movements, it is also extreme. Like I'm very privileged to be, sitting and asking this question to you. Your body of work has been really inspiring. So I wanted to ask you, ma'am, why most of these women, they choose, who are part of these path-breaking like social movements, choose to stay away from politics. It is because they don't want to carry forward, because entering politics means being part of the vested interest of the party. Then it is no longer about the social cause. And when we say the case of Mrinal Gore, it is an exception. Also, the
But we
times were
supported
very
her, no?
different.
We actively supported her so many years till she was alive. We always
Yeah.
supported every move of hers, whether it was campaigning or writing about her good work. And so we saw her as our leader. And she was non-sectarian, because we were not part of the Socialist Party, but we all were in independent women's movement, autonomous women's movement. But we had a good vibe. She was ready to listen to all the new issues that were emerging and which were emerging at a grassroots level. So we saw our role as a supporter of an advocate of person like her. And there were many more. At that time, we had Panju Gandhi, we had Alyatai Rangnikar, we had Nirmala Deshpande, who was not in the politics, but at a Gandhian movement, she was very powerful. In our younger days, we supported them. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
So Gitanjali ji, you can go next.
No, I didn't have a question. I just wanted to add to what the fellow Akansha was saying. In case of Rabri Devi, what I think is it was very openly declared that Lalu Yadav, because he's in jail and because he's not able to be active during that period of time, that's when Rabri Devi was pushed. So it was, and what I also want to ask Professor Chaitra is that how does these personal family dynamics play? Is the women in this kind of role, because later we heard, I'm not sure, I'm not journalistically, we heard that Rabri Devi also started protesting of the control that Lalu Yadav was having. So how does these dynamics play? Because we spoke about a lot of these women leaders, whether it is Indira Gandhi or the list that you've shown in Maharashtra, they're all family driven politics. And when we think of, like just like that for common public, what are the top 5 female leaders? Mostly I think 90% will be those who have a paternity or had that coming from that. So just if you could reflect on that minor nuances of family politics, are they able to come out of it, like we eventually saw Indira Gandhi coming out of it and having a very different, so what drives them then that? So just curious about that act.
Actually, that is something which is very interesting, which would be rather very interesting if we get to if we get some data on that. The thing is, family is seen as such a sacrosanct kind of a entity. Again, something that one has to be ideal, good wife, who's obedient to husband, takes care of family responsibilities, and then in pastime possibly joins politics. So those kinds of ideals are so much dominant that I doubt even if that kind of a churning, and which I'm sure must be having some kind of a turmoil must be taking place inside a woman, but how she addresses it, whether that changes her, whether that makes her assert. There was this one web series which came on one of the OTT platform, which I was told was based on Rabdi Devi's life, but I felt that was more of a feminist imagination, or in the sense that that's something which we would like to see. And that's, I often even have myself imagined that when we used to teach in SNDT, we had one foundation course, and in political science we also had two courses on women's movement and women in politics. And I always imagine a scenario where one of my student, after getting married, possibly gets married in a political family, and then she's asked to contest election, and possibly she's reminded of my classes and then asserts. So that was some kind of a fantasy which I already had, or always had, but never came across anything of that sort, or even some kind of memoirs or some kind of experiences where women have shared that their journeys, that how it changed them. Of course, in this some of the platforms of Mahila Raj Satta Andolan, I did come across such experiences, or at least one very strikingly I remember, when that girl, and a very like young girl, like just recently had got married, and her ward was reserved, and her husband asked her to contest in his place. And then she said that I'll contest only on one condition, that you will not interfere. And only if you assure that you will not interfere, then only I'll contest. And he assured that, and then she said that he didn't really interfere. There was another example where the girl said that the same thing had happened, but then the family was the family didn't like she asserting. So they stopped helping her. Any kind of support was not given. And she had a very small child of some 4 or 5 years of age, like somebody was going in a play group. So she said, like, I used to drop her to play group, then daycare. And then because there was nobody to help me, I finally decided that how many sections are there in municipal corporations. So there were some 7, 8 sections were there. So she said, if nobody is helping me, I'll go there, and 1 month to each section. It will take 1 year for me to learn everything. So without anybody's help, she just went on visiting each in the session, and she said, I used to just go there and sit there and observe what kind of people come, what kind of complaints they come up with. And in 1 month, I learned about that section, and then the next section I would visit. That's how she learned. And then she started functioning on her own. So such narratives I've heard of. And then also women who asserted in political parties, they're kept away. That kind of stories also I've heard in Mahila Raj Satta Andolan. Then when they start thinking on their own, they basically are then kept away. कि ये बहुत problems create करती है, asks too many questions, so let's keep her away. So that kind of thing also I've heard of. Also, there was one some structural change that had happened in certain municipal corporations, where 4 wards were clubbed together. So because the wards were reserved for women, no? So what they did is like that the ward would be represented, that the ward would be bigger, and it would be represented by 4 people, 2 women and 2 men. So what these men would do, they would patronize these women. कि मैम कहाँ आके, मतलब आपको फिर ये घर का भी सब करके वहां आके आना है, एंड these officers don't really help. So वहां जाके घंटे वहां पे बैठना पड़ता है, स्पेंड करना पड़ता है. You don't come. We'll do your work and we'll let you know later. अब वो भी, it's like she has 2 responsibilities. She also starts thinking कि ठीक है, why
they control money and vehicle, no? Vehicles
Yeah.
and money is controlled by men.
Yeah.
By doing this. Yeah.
Yes.
So we have all kind of stories. I think when the women will actually start
No,
speaking,
but about Rabdi Devi, like my
so many myths will be shattered. but they are at the moment, like everybody is at least not speaking, and not definitely women from
Right.
political class. So, yeah.
No, about Rabdi Devi, I would like to know what media has written about her, the English media especially, and what one got to know after conducting workshops of our Equity Asia, which does the Panchayati Raj training. She says she was very accessible leader because you can't be puppet CM twice. No, she was CM between
Yes.
97, 99, and then popular mandate she got in 2000. So even if she was propped up by her husband, whatever. But second time when she came, she had thumping majority. It was the women. She said the pulse polio, the kind of things which villages had never seen. No, safe drinking water in Dalit Basti or pulse polio. She in fact, IAS officers hated her because she said that whatever is my program in the village, it has to be executed. So all these corrupt IAS officers, non-functioning IAS officers without any political will to implement anti-poverty programs, all of them were scared, and they in front of her they were scared because she won't say that come and sit and all that for all that basic this thing about treating IAS officers with due respect, that she would not do. But she, at the same time, she was all the programs, because Bihar gets a lot of centrally sponsored schemes, and she said that if you don't implement the scheme, you have it. No. So there was a lot of anger among the bureaucrats because she was so strict with that. But she was very popular at the ground level. No, that she was bringing programs, for example, whether it's Indira Awas Yojana or a small irrigation scheme, pulse polio. It was those 7 years Bihar had 100% pulse polio vaccination happening, no, without any kind of a major what you call calamity or children dying, nothing. She personally took active interest in that. So I think these are the things which are nuances which don't appear in the meta narrative, no, in media. That when you go there, no, yeah.
No, exactly. That's why I found it fascinating that a person who has come as a token minister, and then she goes on to becoming that assertive, powerful minister. That what changed in between in terms of family dynamics also. But yes, you're right. There's no academic thing for that. Journalistic though there are many. But yeah. Thank you so much for answering.
Same in Rajasthan and Kutch, no, where women under Padda. Once initially they're propped up by their family, but then they transcend the restrictions put up by their patriarchs, and they say that no, now I'll be accountable to my constituency.
I think that power, sense of power, once they experience it, then it might change.
Yeah, they say that at home I will be like your daughter or daughter-in-law, do all the. But when it comes to my position as elected representative, I am accountable to those who voted for me. So
thank you. Thank you.
Very fascinating session we had.
Any other questions from the fellows? So there's a question in the Q&A box from Priyanka ji that to what extent does the lack of financial resources hinder individuals from participating in elections, and what measures can be taken to ensure greater inclusivity in the electoral process?
Financial resources, the question was about, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, to what extent? We don't have data as such. We can assume certainly that because women don't have control over resources, or the resources are in the name of the family or the men of the family, definitely that would be one kind of a limitation which they must be facing. But we don't have any data to basically.
But even crowdsourcing, no, after the Aam Aadmi Party's rise, so many of them were doing crowdsourcing using the online platforms.
Yeah,
that also we saw. So even women who are not from political family and who come from poverty groups, they have also won election by getting the nominal fund, but through crowdsourcing.
They have also won election, and on the other hand, we also have stories like now even the voters bargain. They want some kind of either as groups they bargain, they want as a community, or as a locality, they want something to be built for them. So money power is something which is like beyond our imagination, the amount of money that is required in elections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and also Nihalika ji have made 2 observations in the chat box. That
Yeah.
this Lok Sabha election, Sanjana Jatav from SC category got elected from Rajasthan from INC, and Ikra Chaudhary, a Muslim woman, got elected from Uttar Pradesh from the SP. Both are below 30 years of age and both supported by their respective parties, but number of such women are very less. And she also mentioned that Phulan Devi was a strong leader, and even before the party support, she had her own base, which was one of the reasons that the SP gave her ticket. But because she fought against patriarchy and casteism, she was killed. So I think if being in politics, you speak so strongly against the brutal realities, you face such threats on a daily basis. Being in politics, unfortunately, one has to serve vested interests. Also, working for a social cause is difficult while being in politics because you have to sugarcoat your words when in politics.
Yeah, my only response to this is, even if that's true, one can't help it, because as I said, if state is the entity that is deciding for the society, so we can't escape, can't always make a choice to avoid state. We can't really avoid state. And if one has to engage with the state, then
Only thing that can you just explain the theory of critical minimum, which the political scientists say that when you become successful, no, when you not as an individual, you face witch hunting, but when you have a critical number of people who think like you and you are united with them, then there is a long term. Yeah, as you have seen in Scandinavian countries or even in Rwanda, Somalia.
Yeah.
Systemic change, transformative change.
So, any other questions from the fellows? So, thank you, Chaitra ma'am, for taking the time to answer all the questions in such great detail and with so much patience. We
So
hope to have you-
fascinating and hope generating session, because now you can put all this information that you have in a framework. No?
Thank you. I enjoyed, like, very fantastic
practice.
questions, and
Yeah.
got opportunity to interact with Vibhuti ma'am after a long time. I got to know about Indira.
But all participants also they have not
participants,
introduced, but all of them have a very excellent contribution they are making to the society, either in corporate world or in bureaucracy or in social movement or in politics. We have a very good cohort this time. Yeah.
So we hope to have you again at our IMPRI's future programs, ma'am.
Sure.
So, I would now like to invite Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, chair of this program, to deliver the closing remarks for today's session.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think
also,
today we had.
yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I think today we have a very interesting discussion, and also the theoretical framework within which we can see the issues of getting foothold in politics. We have come a long way. There was a time where there was there used to be 60s and 70s where there was a tremendous opposition even by the women freedom fighters for women's reservation. In fact, the discussion on women's reservation in the Panchayati Raj institution went on for 30 years, from 64 to 1994. And even when we used to discuss about women's reservation, after the women empowerment policy was adopted by Government of India and unanimously passed by Parliament of India in 2001, which was declared as a women empowerment year, person like Mrinalta took long to accept that, yes, we need more this thing. So many examples were given where women with very commitment, great commitment to the constituency had won the election, and they did not even get the deposit was also lost because of the hurdles that they faced. And afterwards, like we came together and had so many roundtables on women's reservation throughout the country. And after that, the consensus was built, at least in the progressive women's movement, that yes, we need this thing. In 2010, when the bill was introduced, where all women MPs, irrespective of their political allegiance, came together from all the political parties, independent, and they introduced the bill with thumping majority. After that, there was so many ruckus and so much of infights that happened, bringing in the whole discourse on women who come from elite background and percutting, the women who have short hair, and they are the ones who will come into dominance. And that is the way issue was being diverted. And they said the women, Dalit women, Adivasi women, Muslim women will be left out. That was the argument male politicians raised in the parliament. Parliamentary proceedings were telecast throughout the world. We had only then through our only channel that we had was Doordarshan, which would telecast, when Parliament channel would telecast it. Whole world saw the kind of physical violence and the destruction of furniture of Parliament that took in our country. And we have, after that, several platforms and the United Fronts of women's organizations were formed, and nationally this issue was taken up. So more than 15 times bill was introduced. There was no debate in the Parliament. And the bill also became redundant because in 3 consecutive sessions, if it is not taken up, the bill is not taken up, it goes lapses. But finally, in September 2024, we managed to get the bill passed, and now we have a Women's Reservation Act, so Mahila, the Vidhan, what is it? And now we see that at least they have given caveat that it will be according to the new census. We still have not got the new census. The last thing we had was constituencies were formed based on 2011 census. So probably by 2029, I think women's reservation will be implemented. The most saddest part of it is that all those political parties which unanimously passed the bill and made it an act, they, in the latest election also, they did not give candidature. 33% candidature was not given even at the party level. So we can see that the kind of lack of political will or lethargy that you see in the political party, except for Mamata Banerjee's party, we did not get any other. And I think in Orissa, Vidhan Sabha, 33% were given. Akali Dal has promised to give the 1/3 reservation to women candidates. But I think the sea change will come only after the act gets implemented. And before that, I think we need to channelize our energy in making more and more women who have experience in the Panchayati Raj institutions. Many of them have now, they don't have to even have to use reserved seat, because this you saw in Maharashtra, all women panchayat. So even in the open seats, women have won, because the villagers think that they are less corrupt. They are using the development fund for the area development. Now, these are the women we need to make them more capable in terms of managing the larger constituency and also the nitty-gritty of governance and political participation at a national and subnational level. So I think this is the challenge now we have, that both the women's movement and women who are ready to be in the mainstream politics, they have to come together. Thank you. Brilliant session, Chaitra. Very fascinating discussion. You have all of us made it a grand success. Professor Indira, would you like to sum up?
You have already summed up.
So,
yeah,
southern perspective, if you want to bring from the southern countries, southern states have a different kind of trajectory. The patriarchy is very different.
Yeah, almost a similar situation we find in southern states also. Political women from political parties are coming up, and very few.
But you had chief minister who was woman.
Yeah, of course, Tamil Nadu. Yeah, but she also had patronage from the earlier this one. So what Madam was telling, like Chaitra was telling, you need that. But now with Panchayat Raj institutions, with 73rd Amendment, women are more experienced. As you said, the transformation is taking place. And certainly with when this reservation in Parliament comes through, now women are prepared, but as you said, they need to be more sensitized towards the participation and also more empowered to take up the opportunities that they emerge. So yeah, all of us have a role to play in this particular situation. Thank you so much. Thanks, Chaitra. It was very, very nice. And all of you also participated actively. And thanks for the nice session. Thank you.
I
And
extend.
thank you, Ria, for conducting it so well.
Thank you, ma'am. So I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Vibhuti Patel ji and Professor Indira for their closing remarks, which offered profound reflections on today's discussion and underscored the significance of fostering women leaders in public policy. So this concludes the day 3rd of the Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship Cohort 2.0. And as we come to the end of day 3 of Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship, Cohort 2.0, an online national winter school program, a 4-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship program, I, Ria Rawat, researcher at IMPRI and Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, Gender Impact Studies Center, New Delhi. We sincerely thank our experts for day 3, Dr. Chaitra Redkar ji, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, and Professor M. Indira, for graciously sharing their valuable time and providing participants with profound insights and knowledge during this online certificate program. And we thank all our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. Readings for the session have been shared in your email, and a video of the session will also be shared with you for learning. We eagerly await your presence in the upcoming sessions scheduled every Sunday and for the special session on March 8th, International Women's Day. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube, listening to us on various podcasts, or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in IMPRI's Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning programs. Wish you a very good evening. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.